it's Lexie. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you my favorite books of 2023. This is one of my favorite videos to film, and I always wait until the end of the year to film this, like the beginning of the new year, just because there were actually a few books that I find this happens all the time that just end up becoming favorites that I read in December. So obviously I want to include those all in here. So these are the top 10 books that I read kind of throughout 2023. They're kind of all over in terms of genre too, which is really great. So I'll kind of dive right in. So without further ado, let's get started. Before I forget, they're in no particular order, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about these books because I do have more in-depth reviews that you can find in my wrap-ups. But basically I just wanted to kind of talk about some of these books and why I like them, and if you want to learn more about them and more of my thoughts, you can go check out my full reviews of them. But yeah, this is more of like kind of a speed round, you know, top books of 2023, so let's get ahead and get started. Starting up, I first have Curse by Marissa Meyer. This is a book that I read back in January, and it is the second book in her Duology, which is a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, and I really love this. I was slightly familiar with this kind of, you know, fairy tale of Rumpelstiltskin, but I really enjoyed this. This is a very like kind of dark take on this fairy tale, and we follow our main character in the first book, Gillig, who has always kind of woven tales of herself telling lies, and so the one day she ends up getting an encounter with the kind of evil elf king, and she is able to kind of spin this tale that she can weave straw into gold, and it kind of goes off from there. I felt like I really enjoyed the first book, but I felt the second book was really where everything really took off, and I thought it was really well done, well written, and just a perfect book to read when it's like kind of cold and dark outside. Next up, I have the Greenbone Saga by Fonda. I read the last two books in this trilogy in the beginning of 2023, and I really loved it. This is a really unique kind of urban fantasy where we follow this family over the course of maybe 4 or 5 decades, which I think is very unique, just kind of following this family over the course of so many years. But it's an urban fantasy that has this kind of magic system where jade can be harvested in this small island community that the book takes place in, and people who have kind of powers get enhanced with jade, and it kind of goes off from there. I felt this was like, again, a great, really kind of well-written family saga, and you kind of follow these narration and kind of story arcs over the course of the 3 books and also several decades. So it was definitely a really great payout and definitely a really unique series as well. Next up, I have Hood Feminism. This is a book that I listened to as audiobook, and I also own the physical copy as well. And this book was really great. It talks about how kind of feminism kind of geared today is very much kind of told from a white point of view, or kind of a white feminism part where it only helps women who are white, where it kind of we need to adapt a new kind of form of feminism that also includes minorities as well into it, and how a lot of the kind of feminist ideas that are kind of going about now only benefit kind of white middle class women, and how if we want to benefit everyone, adapting feminism from a point of view that helps everyone will benefit everyone in the long run. This book, like I said, once the book kind of points out these things, you can't unsee them. So I think this is a book that everyone needs to read, and I do think the audiobook was really well done. Next up, this is the trilogy that got me through my dissertation defense stress, and is the Folk of the Air trilogy by Holly Black. I marathoned through this. This was like when I had like very few brain cells left after like my dissertation and just the stress of it all. This is like the book that helped me kind of unwind and de-stress at the end of the day. I marathoned all the 3 books, like I couldn't put them down. I really enjoyed them, and then after that I also picked up The Stolen Heir, which is kind of the spin-off, and it was just a lot of fun. I felt like even though it was a YA, I was really invested in this fantasy, and it was just a joy to read. So I really enjoyed this. Like I said, this series helped me get out of my like head a little bit and just kind of distract myself from the stress of, you know, preparing to defend for my dissertation defense. Next up, I have Lessons in Chemistry, and this book I think was really well written, is very popular, and I really enjoyed the TV show as well. But as a woman in STEM, I could very much relate to a lot of the kind of themes and things that have Elizabeth encounters being a woman in a STEM related field. Even though this is in the 50s and there has been some improvement with some things, I could relate to a lot of the kind of sexism that still exists in an engineering field, and in her case in kind of chemistry biology related area. And I could relate. I remember I was reading this on my plane ride to Vail for a conference, and I was just like crying on the plane. Like, this book was really, really great and definitely worth all the hype that it gets. So this is the book that is solely responsible for getting me out of my summer-long reading slump, and it is The Lost Girls of Willowbrook by M.L Wiseman. I read this book towards the end of August, and the summer was like a really bad reading slump. I think between June and I read this in the beginning of September, and basically from like June to August, I think I read only 5 books and only read like 1 book in August, just being so busy and traveling a lot. So this book really got me out of my reading slump. It was a really, book that has such a visceral reaction in me, where I could feel my heart racing, could feel really invested in this character, and it is a historical fiction mix with like a thriller / murder mystery, so it kind of took me by surprise with some of where the storyline went, but it was really, really good. And this book, like I said, I have to thank for helping me get out of my reading slump. Next up, I have The Once and Future Witches by Alix and Harrow. This was just a really great kind of historical fantasy following witches during the suffragettes movement, when there was kind of still the remnants of the Salem witch trials. I thought it had really good themes of sisterhood, the bonds between sisters, and I was just really gripped with the story and like the mystery and trying to figure out what was going on. And I think using kind of the backlight of the feminist movement in correlation with the witches movement, I thought was really, really well done and a really great read. Next up, I have If We Were Villains by M.L Rio. I really enjoyed this. This was a book that was recommended to me by my fiance, and I really liked it. I think I may have liked it a little bit more than The Secret History by Donna Tartt, but this one I was really, really enjoyed it. Even though I was able to figure out who was the student that killed the other student, I still was really invested in why the kind of narrator was the scapegoat, and like why he kind of sacrificed himself. I think if you kind of pay attention, I think you can figure it out, but I was really invested in like the why. And so even though I kind of was able to figure out some of these things, I was really invested in like the why and the build up, and I thought it was really well done, and I think it does a good use of a lot of the dark academia tropes. I think it was done really well. Next up, I have the One Dark Window duology. This book, I was not expecting to love it as much as I did, and it really took me by surprise. I found it really gripping, really exciting, and it just had a really unique fantasy element to it that I haven't really seen anywhere else. And definitely kind of marathoning this duology back to back, you get a really good kind of payoff with the things that are kind of started within the first book, and how they gradually you kind of solve the mystery with the characters in the second one. And I think the payoff was really well done. It was really like a unique fantasy read, and I just really was obsessed. And I think this might be my favorite book out of the entire year, and it is Looking for Jane by Heather Morris, and or Heather Marshall, sorry. And this book really took me by surprise, even though it is based on kind of about abortions and kind of the underground abortion movement to get people access to abortion. It really is solely based on motherhood, and I loved the kind of weaving of the 3 different storylines through different decades of kind of the time period within the novel and the weaving, and there was a really big plot twist at the end that I did not see coming, so it really took me by surprise. And yeah, it was just a really great read, and definitely a book that I think everyone needs to read. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed kind of the speed round of me kind of ranking all of my books. I could do a really good in-depth video, but I feel like it would just be way too long, and you can go check out my full reviews of these if you are interested. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what some of your favorite books were of 2023, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.